The baby remains the same. Yeah, obviously, I think I can see that in both, well, there are other parties, but inevitably the big ones is ODM and Jubilee. In both of them, what has been shown is a very high rate of sitting MPs falling, sitting MCs falling. Even I think we will still yet see at the next elections even quite a number of governors falling. And I think it's because of what we were discussing earlier, disaffection from voters. People have been very observant in terms of the expectations for delivery from people who are in public office. Unlike in the past when it would stop at just bribing people, you will hear oftentimes people now link their livelihoods, their quality of their lives with the type of political leadership they have. A lot often, even when you just interview people at random on the street, they tend to actually now link the quality of the livelihoods they're living with the quality of the leadership they have. So even though we like to say that in Kenya our politics are not issue-based, when it is local, when it remains local, people bring out issues. When it goes national, they're talking about the presidency, that people are whipped into a frenzy about this versus the other, based on ethnic, tribal numbers. But when the politics go local, I have had in very many places people say, many counties people say, leave this to us. People have had a lot of disaffection where they attribute failure of devolution to deliver to them on certain specific leaders. And this is particularly political leaders. They punish them. Look at Kiambu here. I mean, I had on many news channels ordinary people being interviewed on the streets and saying he's arrogant, he's very arrogant, he's disrespectful. That's the outgoing governor. And if, I suppose it's true because I had on so many news channels, on Twitter and so on, people saying that. And if people can keep that in their mind and use it to punish you at the poll, it means that there's a lot more consciousness. This is not an election in which people have been whipped, where there appear to be signs. And I think the foremost was Wasengishu. There was a revolt, a very open revolt, that you try to whip us into a sack, we will not accept. Yeah. We will revolt.
Professor Macharia, are you seeing that this is based on issues or is it based on emotions? What kind of a person are you?
I think it's more of issues than emotions, but maybe both. As we noted earlier, increasingly, the voter is very astute. He's asking serious questions about the person running for office. We have seen some sort of protest results. When you try to impose somebody, the residents in a place come out in big numbers to say no. And then they even elect somebody you did not expect. Just as a protest, say, no, we don't want that sort of thing. So there's that protectiveness. But there's also the issue of, can this person deliver what we want or not at this local level? And I dare say even at the national level. At the presidency, nobody wins because he has the support of his supposed tribe. No one. Those who win is because they have ability to cut across the board. And they win a lot of support from all corners. Take, for instance, the myth that Uhuru was elected by the Kalenjins and the Kikuyus. It's a myth. If you combine them in terms of absolute population, not more than 25% of the national population. So if the theory is that they were elected by these two, who comprise barely 25%, and in theory, the other 75% then voted the other way, this is a myth. Because there's no way 25% can defeat 75%. Yet narratives have been created to imply that somebody gets elected because of a particular tribe.
Isn't that the reason why the results were contested?
But at least that is in terms of the absolute population. Yeah. But in terms of how the voter register, is compiled, there are other reasons that could make the 75 actually become the 25. Because you look at the issuance of national IDs, for instance, there are communities that are underprivileged, particularly border communities. And some have even argued that there could be political connotations in terms of how the public service is facilitating the issuance of national IDs in particular regions, while having an advantage in other regions. And that can manipulate the voting trends entirely. I think that I had to respond to that in regard to what Professor is, the narrative is putting across.
No, I think I agree with you that then we need to get the raw data itself, yeah? Not just talk about suppositions. What's the raw data? Let me give you another example. In 1961, yeah, when we were told, those of us who are alive, that KANU was a party of only two tribes. The Kooks, because of the Mau Mau War. The Jaluos, because of the Mboya and Odinga. The theory was that all the others were in Kadu. And that you cannot say that there was an African government. This was a Mzungu government.
Yeah.
And it produced a list, a register, where we had all the others in Kadu, in theory. And when the elections were held in February 1961, KANU won, despite that myth. In 1963, May, the same scenario, KANU won, despite the narrative. So what does that mean? There is a disconnect between the political leaders, who sometimes are baptized tribal leaders, and their followers who do not believe them. Because if they believe those guys, KANU should never have won in 1961 and 1960.
Clearly a lot of myths that are being busted this time round and going into the elections. The logistics and the look of things totally different, and we'll be talking more about that. Remember, we are covering for you those results trickling in from yesterday's Jubilee primaries, and of course the bigger event of the day, and that is of the NASA coalition announcing their presidential flag bearer going into the August 8th elections. We shall be bringing you details of that and more. Stay with us. Hashtag Decision 2017.
This is NTV.